3 weeks before Thanksgiving, my son called and said 13 words that made me realize I had been failing at fatherhood in ways I never imagined. Dad, don't come this year. Jessica's parents are hosting, and honestly, it's just easier without you. I stood at my workbench in my garage in Minneapolis, Minnesota, holding my phone with hands still covered in sawdust from the birdhouse I was building, and felt something inside me go completely still. I was 64 years old. I had raised that boy alone after his mother died when he was 12. I had worked double shifts to keep him in college. I had taught him everything I knew about being a man, about honor, about showing up for people, and now his wife had decided I made their Thanksgiving complicated. So, I spent Thanksgiving morning at a diner on Lake Street, watching families pile into booths around me, trying to force down eggs that tasted like nothing. That's when Pastor Mike from Grace Lutheran Church walked in with his wife Ann. They spotted me sitting alone, and Ann didn't even ask, just slid into the booth across from me and said, "Bill, what are you doing here? We've got a table for 12 at the church and only 8 people coming. You're joining us." I started to say no. I had built a life around not needing anyone, not being a burden, handling my grief and loneliness like a man. But something in Ann's face stopped me. There was no pity there, just simple recognition. One person seeing another person who shouldn't be alone. I had no idea that saying yes would completely reshape everything I thought I understood about family. 6 years later, my son stood in my living room with tears running down his face, and only then did I realize what that invitation had truly set in motion. Thank you for being here and for listening. Please leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. I'd love to hear from you. Also, a quick note. This story includes some fictional elements added for dramatic purposes. Any resemblance to real people or places is coincidental, but the message is absolutely real. My name is William Grant. Most people call me Bill. I'm 70 now, telling you this with 6 years of perspective I didn't have back then. For most of my adult life, I thought I was doing everything right. I worked hard, provided a stable home, taught my son Marcus to be responsible and self-sufficient. After my wife Ellen died of cancer when Marcus was 12, I threw myself into being both mother and father. I thought sacrifice was the same thing as love. I thought if I just worked hard enough, showed up to every game, paid for everything, that would be enough. But sitting alone in that diner on Thanksgiving morning, I learned something that cut deep. Sometimes you can give everything you have and still end up completely unnecessary to the person you gave it to. The diner was called Rosie's Kitchen, one of those old-school places with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that could strip paint. The waitress had looked at me with knowing eyes when I walked in alone, seated me in the back corner like she understood I didn't need to watch other people's happiness up close. I ordered the special, turkey and dressing, trying to make it feel like a real Thanksgiving. It tasted like cardboard in my mouth. All I could think about was Marcus's voice on the phone 3 weeks earlier. That careful tone he used when he was about to say something he knew would hurt me. "Dad, don't come this year. Jessica's parents are hosting, and honestly, it's just easier without you." I had asked what he meant by easier. We had done Thanksgiving together every year since he got married 6 years ago. I brought the pies, played with my granddaughters Sophie and Lily, helped clean up afterward. I thought things were fine between us. It's just, with Jessica's whole family coming, and the girls being at that age where they notice tensions, and after what happened last month at the barbecue, he trailed off. What happened at the barbecue was that I had gently disagreed with Jessica about letting the girls watch certain shows on streaming services. Not harshly. I had simply said, "I think they're a bit young for that content," and suggested some alternatives. Jessica had gone quiet for the rest of the evening, and Marcus had called me the next day to tell me I needed to respect their parenting choices and stop undermining Jessica. "Marcus," I had said carefully, "I'm your father. Sophie and Lily are my granddaughters. I've spent every Thanksgiving with you since you were born. I just want to be with my family." The pause on the line was long enough for me to hear Jessica's voice in the background, sharp and insistent, asking what I was saying now. "I'm sorry, Dad. Maybe next year. Jessica really thinks it's best if we keep things simple this year. Maybe next year." like I was an optional subscription he was considering canceling. So there I was, 64 years old, widowed for 17 years, sitting alone in a diner full of people who all had somewhere better to be, wondering how I had become so completely expendable to the person I had built my entire life around. That's when Pastor Mike and Ann walked in. Mike was a tall man in his early 60s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Ann was small, energetic. With gray hair she wore in a practical bob. They had been trying to get me to come to more church events for months, but I had always found excuses. "Bill Grant," Mike said, walking straight to my booth. "What in the world are you doing here alone on Thanksgiving?" "I don't want to intrude on your plans," I said. "Nonsense," Ann said, already waving to the waitress. "Mike, go get the car. Bill, you're coming with us. The church potluck starts in an hour, and we've got more food than we know what to do with." I looked at my half-eaten plate, at the families laughing around me, at the life I had somehow ended up with, despite doing everything I thought I was supposed to do, and I made a choice that would change everything. "Okay," I said. "Thank you. I'd appreciate that." That first Thanksgiving at Grace Lutheran lasted 6 hours. The fellowship hall was decorated with construction paper turkeys the Sunday school kids had made. There were 3 long tables covered in dishes, more food than I had seen in years. Mike and Ann introduced me to everyone. The Johnsons, who ran the food bank, the Ramirez family, with their 4 kids under 10, old Tom Henderson, a widower like me who had been coming to the church for 40 years, Betty Carlson, whose daughter lived in California and couldn't make it home for the holidays. "Looks like we're the orphan table," Betty said, laughing. But there was warmth in it, not sadness. By the time we sat down to eat, I had helped set up tables, carved 2 turkeys, and gotten roped into a spirited debate about the Vikings' playoff chances with Tom and a guy named Frank, who insisted this was finally their year. The Ramirez kids, Carlos and Maria's twins, Emma and Diego, had immediately decided I needed to see their drawings of dinosaurs. "Don't try to get out of it," Carlos said, grinning. "Once they pick you, you're stuck." The meal was exactly as good as Ann had promised. But what I remember most wasn't the food. It was the way people asked real questions and waited for real answers. The way Mike said grace and included everyone by name. Even me, the newcomer. The way Ann squeezed my shoulder when she saw my eyes getting wet and didn't make me explain why. This was what Thanksgiving was supposed to feel like. This was what I had wanted with Marcus. When I left that night, Ann hugged me at the door and said something that stayed with me for years. "Same time Sunday for service, Bill. And every Sunday after that. You're family now." I wanted to be. 4 months passed, then 8, then a year. The Sunday services at Grace Lutheran became the fixed point my week rotated around. I started arriving early to help Mike with maintenance work around the building. I taught Tom how to use email so he could video chat with his son in Arizona. I helped Carlos build a treehouse for his kids in their backyard. Ann insisted I had a gift for working with the youth group, though I suspected she just knew I needed to feel useful. I didn't hear from Marcus during that first year. Not on my birthday in February. Not on Father's Day. Not on Christmas. I sent gifts for Sophie and Lily's birthday in March, identical dolls they had mentioned wanting. I got a text from Jessica 3 weeks later. "Girls say thanks." 5 words. No photo of them with the gifts. No call from Marcus. Nothing. I called twice that year. Once in April, once in August. Both times Marcus was in the middle of something and promised to call back. He never did. The silence hurt every single day. But the pain was different now because it existed alongside something else. Purpose. Community. The people at Grace Lutheran weren't replacing my son. Nothing could do that. But they were teaching me something I had never learned. I could matter to people without earning it through sacrifice. I could be wanted for who I was, not what I could provide. One Sunday afternoon, about 16 months after that first Thanksgiving, I was helping Ann organize the storage room when I found her sitting on a folding chair, crying quietly. "Ann," I said. "What's wrong?" She looked up, startled, then wiped her eyes quickly. "Oh, Bill, I didn't hear you. It's nothing." Just being silly. It's not nothing if it's making you cry. She hesitated, then set down the box of hymnals she'd been holding. My brother died yesterday. Heart attack. We hadn't spoken in 14 years. The story came out slowly. Anne and her younger brother Tom had fallen out over money their parents left them. He thought she had taken advantage of their mother at the end. Anne thought he had never been there to help with the caregiving. Words were said. Lawyers got involved. Eventually, silence. I reached out 5, maybe 6 times over the years, Anne said. Sent letters. Called on his birthday. He never responded. And now, he's gone. All I can think about is everything I never got to say. Every apology I should have made. Whether I was right or wrong, I stood there in that cluttered storage room, watching this woman who had shown me such kindness grieve not just her brother but the relationship they had let die. And something shifted in my chest. I'm so sorry, Anne. She looked at me directly, her eyes fierce despite the tears. Don't let this happen to you, Bill. Whatever's broken with Marcus, don't let pride or hurt keep you from trying. Time runs out. Then all you have left is regret. I thought about that conversation for weeks. I thought about it when I drove past the hardware store where Marcus and I used to shop together for supplies for his projects. I thought about it when Sophie and Lily's birthday came around again and I sent books that were never acknowledged. I thought about it on Father's Day when the phone didn't ring, but I didn't reach out. The fear of being told again that I was easier to deal with when I stayed away kept me frozen. Then, 2 years after that first Thanksgiving, my phone rang on a Tuesday morning in October. It was Marcus. Dad. His voice sounded strange, thin, not like the confident man I knew. I gripped the phone. Marcus, it's good to hear from you. Yeah. Listen, Jessica and I need to talk to you about something. My heart sank. I knew that tone. I had heard it before, years ago, when he needed money for a down payment he couldn't quite afford but was too proud to ask for directly. Dad, we're in a situation. My company did layoffs last month. I'm out. And we had some investments that didn't go the way we planned. Plus, Jessica's business has been slow. We've been trying to handle it, but now we're behind on the mortgage and the bank is talking foreclosure. And how much do you need? I asked, even though I knew I shouldn't. $75,000. I know it's a lot, but you have the pension, and the house is paid off. And if we can just get through this quarter, I've got some leads on new jobs, and Jessica thinks her business will pick up after the holidays. Marcus, I interrupted. When did we last talk? Before today. A real conversation. Not you texting me back after I called. Silence on the line. I'm trying to remember, I continued. Was it the Thanksgiving you told me not to come? No. Wait. I saw you at your house when I dropped off Christmas presents. You answered the door, took the gifts, said you were in the middle of dinner. That was it. 2 years ago. 2 years of nothing. And now you need $75,000. Dad, that's not fair. You know things have been complicated with Jessica. She has strong feelings about boundaries and respecting our space as a family. Strong feelings about me, I finished. Yes, I know. I'm too opinionated, too old-fashioned, too much of something. I've been whatever she needed me to be, Marcus. Invisible. And now, suddenly, I'm visible again. Because you need money. I'm your son. His voice cracked. Doesn't that mean anything? Don't you care if we lose our house? If the girls have to change schools, leave their friends? The question hit like a physical blow because, of course, it meant something. He was my son, my only child, the person I had loved most in the world for 38 years. But he was also the person who had let his wife slowly cut me out of his life, who had gone 2 years without a real conversation, who was calling now not because he missed me but because he needed something from me. Marcus, I love you. I have always loved you. But I can't give you $75,000. Why not? You have it. I know you do. The pension plus what Mom left. Because giving you that money won't fix what's actually broken. Because Jessica will find another crisis next month or next year, and I'll become the ATM you tap when things get hard. Because you haven't asked me how I am in 2 years. Because you chose her comfort over your father's presence at your table. So you're choosing money over your own son? His voice went hard. That's who you are now? The kind of father who abandons his family when they need him most? No, I said, and my voice was steady despite the shaking in my hands. I'm the kind of father who learned that love isn't the same as being used. I'm the kind of father who has people in his life now who show up on Sundays not because they need something, but because they want to be there. I'm choosing that, Marcus. I'm choosing to be valued, not just needed when it's convenient. There was a long pause. Then Jessica's voice in the background, sharp and angry, asking what I was saying. You know what, Dad? Marcus's voice was ice. Jessica was right about you all along. She said you were selfish and controlling, that you never respected us as adults. I defended you for years. I won't make that mistake again. We'll figure this out on our own. Don't call. Don't text. Don't send gifts the girls never asked for. As far as I'm concerned, you made your choice. The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen, the phone still in my hand, and waited for the devastation to hit. It came, in waves. But mixed with the grief was something I didn't expect. Relief. I had finally stopped pretending. I had finally told the truth. And Marcus had shown me exactly who he had become, or maybe who he had always been, and I had been too afraid to see it. That evening, I drove to Mike and Anne's house even though it wasn't Sunday. Mike answered the door, took one look at my face, and said, "Come in, Bill." Anne just made coffee. I told them everything. Marcus's call, the money, the ultimatum, the cold click of disconnection. They listened the way they always did, without interrupting, without rushing to fix it. You did the right thing, Anne said firmly when I finished. Boundaries aren't abandonment, Bill. You have to remember that. It doesn't feel like the right thing. It feels like I just lost my son. You didn't lose him today, Mike said gently. You've been losing him for years, piece by piece. Every time you accepted being excluded, every time you let disrespect slide. Today you just finally let yourself see it. He was right. I had been losing Marcus since he married Jessica, maybe even before that. Every time I told myself things would get better, if I just tried harder, expected less, gave more. I had been slowly erasing myself to make room for his marriage, and he had let me disappear without ever asking me to stay. What do I do now? You keep living, Anne said. You keep showing up on Sundays. You let us love you, and you trust that God has a plan, even when you can't see it. 4 years passed. 4 years without a word from Marcus. No birthday cards, no Father's Day calls, no photos of Sophie and Lily, who were growing up without knowing their grandfather. I learned about his life the way strangers learn about each other, through the occasional Facebook post I couldn't help but look at before reminding myself to stop. He had found a new job, apparently. They hadn't lost the house. The girls were in ballet now, and gymnastics. Jessica posted pictures of their family trips to Wisconsin Dells, to the Boundary Waters, to somewhere with a beach. Life was continuing without me, and I was edited out, completely. But my life was continuing too. I retired fully from construction management. I started volunteering at the church's homeless outreach program. I became unofficial grandfather to half the kids in the congregation. Carlos and Maria's twins called me Grandpa Bill. I taught 3 different families how to do basic home repairs. Tom and I went fishing every other Saturday. Anne drafted me to help with Vacation Bible School, and somehow I ended up in charge of teaching a dozen 8-year-olds about Noah's Ark. I was happy. Not the desperate kind of happy that comes from finally escaping loneliness, but the quiet, settled kind that comes from finding where you belong. Then came the call that changed everything. It was a Thursday afternoon in September. I was at the church helping Mike install new lighting in the sanctuary when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. William Grant? Yes. This is Bill. This is Dr. Patel at Hennepin County Medical Center. Your son Marcus Grant listed you as his emergency contact. He's been admitted. There's been a medical emergency. The drive to the hospital took 30 minutes that felt like 30 hours. Mike came with me. He didn't ask. Just got in my truck and said, "You're not doing this alone." Marcus was in the ICU when I arrived. Acute pancreatitis, they told me. Complications from years of stress and poor diet, exacerbated by what they suspected was drinking more than he admitted. He was stable, but it had been touch and go. He needed surgery. He'd be in the hospital for at least a week. Maybe more. Jessica was there, but she stepped out when I arrived, and we passed each other in the hallway without speaking. Sophie and Lily were there too. 12 years old now, tall and unfamiliar. They looked at me with uncertain eyes. "Grandpa?" Sophie said hesitantly. "Yeah, sweetheart. I'm here. Mom said you were busy. That's why you didn't visit." I opened my mouth to correct her, then stopped. What would be the point? She was 12 years old and her dad was in the ICU. She didn't need me to explain how I had been carefully excluded from her life. She just needed someone to be there. "I'm not busy anymore," I said. "I'm right here." Mike stayed with me in the waiting room. Anne arrived an hour later with sandwiches and coffee. Carlos and Maria came after work, bringing the twins who immediately attached themselves to Sophie and Lily, chattering about school and gymnastics, and somehow making them smile despite everything. "You didn't have to come," I said to Carlos. "Bill," Carlos said, putting a hand on my shoulder. "This is what family does. We show up." The next week was a blur. Marcus's recovery was slow and complicated. Jessica, it turned out, had a work crisis she couldn't get out of and had to travel to Chicago. Her parents were too old to help, so the job of caring for Marcus and the girls fell to me. I moved into their guest room. I drove the girls to school and activities. I made meals, cleaned the house, sat with Marcus during his hospital stays and recovery. I did everything a father does. Everything I had always wanted to do, while Marcus watched me with an expression I couldn't read. 2 weeks into my stay, late at night, Marcus called my name from his room. "Dad? Can you come here?" I found him sitting up in bed, his face pale in the light from the hallway. He had been crying. "Can't sleep," he said. "The pain meds are wearing off, but it's not time for more yet. And I keep thinking about things, about how wrong everything went." I sat in the chair beside his bed, the same chair I had sat in every night to check on him before I went to sleep. "You're going to be okay," I said. "Doctor said you're healing well." "That's not what I mean." He took a shaky breath. "When I was in the ER, when I thought I might actually die, you know what I thought about?" I shook my head. "You. The last thing I said to you. Don't call. As far as I'm concerned, you made your choice. 4 years ago, Dad. Those were going to be my last words to my father." He was crying harder now, and I didn't know what to do with it. I had imagined versions of this conversation 1,000 times, but now that it was happening, all my prepared responses evaporated. "I was so wrong," Marcus whispered. "About everything. Jessica told me you were trying to control my life, that you didn't respect our marriage, that you were toxic for the girls. And I believed her because it was easier than admitting I was weak, that I had let her push away the one person who had never stopped showing up for me." "Marcus, let me finish. Please." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "These past 2 weeks, you've been here every single day. Every single day. Jessica has called maybe twice. Her parents sent flowers. And you, the father I cut out of my life, you moved into my house and took care of my daughters and me without a single complaint, without making me feel guilty, without asking for anything. You're my son," I said simply. "That's what fathers do." "No." He shook his head. "That's what good fathers do. That's what you do." And I threw it away. I threw you away because Jessica didn't like that you had opinions, because standing up to her was harder than cutting you off. We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, I could hear a dog barking somewhere in the neighborhood. Normal life continuing while something enormous shifted between us. "I want to meet them," Marcus said finally. "Who?" "The people who have been your family while I was too stupid to appreciate what I had. Mike and Anne. These people you talk about when you think I'm asleep. The church people who brought food and sat with you in the waiting room. They're the ones who were there for you when I wasn't." I felt my throat tighten. "You want to meet them?" "I want to thank them," Marcus said, "for taking care of my father when I should have been the one doing it." The first Sunday that Marcus and the girls attended Grace Lutheran was 3 months later, after he had recovered enough to travel. I drove them there, with my heart pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. What if the people at church resented them for how they had treated me? What if the two halves of my life couldn't fit together? I shouldn't have worried. Anne met us at the door, took one look at Marcus standing nervously behind me, and opened her arms. "You must be Marcus. I've been praying for you for years. Come in, come in." The service was awkward at first. Marcus and the girls were quiet, overwhelmed by this warm, welcoming community that had given their father and grandfather everything they had denied him. But Emma and Diego Ramirez broke the ice by dragging Sophie and Lily off to show them the Sunday school room. By the time the service ended, the girls were laughing, and Marcus was shaking hands with people who treated him like family even though they had every reason not to. At the potluck lunch afterward, I watched Marcus talk with Mike about construction work. Saw Anne teaching the girls how to make her famous apple crisp in the church kitchen. Saw Tom showing Marcus photos of the fish we had caught last summer. As we were leaving, Marcus pulled Anne aside. I watched them talk for a few minutes. Saw Marcus wipe his eyes. Saw Anne hug him tightly. On the drive home, Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I understand now." "Understand what?" "Why you didn't give me the money. Why you set that boundary. They don't need anything from you, Dad. They just want you there. That's something I forgot how to give you, but I want to learn again." I didn't say anything. I just reached over and squeezed his shoulder. 6 months later, Marcus separated from Jessica. It wasn't quick or easy. There were custody battles, and financial settlements, and therapy sessions. But he worked through it with a determination I hadn't seen in him since he was young. These days, Sunday dinner at Grace Lutheran includes a few more chairs. Marcus brings his famous 7-layer dip. Sophie and Lily are in the youth group I help lead. Jessica is gone from our lives, a painful lesson that none of us talk about much. And I sit at that crowded table, looking at the family I chose and the family that finally chose me back, and I feel something I didn't know I had been missing all those years. Wholeness. Last Thanksgiving, 6 years after that first meal at the church, I stood in the fellowship hall with a cup of coffee and watched 3 generations of family, blood and chosen, laughing together. Marcus caught my eye across the room and raised his glass. "Hey, Dad." "Yeah? Thanks for not giving up on me. Even when I gave you every reason to." I thought about everything that had happened. The rejection, the silence, the phone call asking for money, the medical crisis that finally cracked him open, the slow, careful work of rebuilding something we had both nearly destroyed. "That's what fathers do," I said. "The good ones anyway." And Anne, who had been listening from the kitchen doorway, smiled and said, "That's what family does." If you're watching this and struggling with family, whether it's the family you were born into or the family you're trying to build, I want you to know something. It's never too late. It's never too late to set a boundary. It's never too late to find people who value you. It's never too late to let someone back in if they've truly changed. Family isn't about obligation or blood or shared history alone. Family is about choice. It's about showing up day after day, not because you have to, but because you want to. It's about seeing someone's worth even when they can't see it themselves. Pastor Mike and Anne saw that in me on a Thanksgiving when I was at my lowest. And because they chose to invite a stranger to their table, I found everything I didn't know I was looking for. If this story meant something to you, please share it. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And remember, the best revenge isn't loud or angry. The best revenge is building a life so full of love that the people who rejected you finally see what they lost. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next one.